How we doing, everyone? Dave Brown back here with the New Populist. Thank you for joining me again. Now, if you've been on X, you have seen the onslaught against Tucker Carlson. The neocons, the establishment right, is busy trying to cancel him, ostensibly for platforming a white supremacist and a anti-Semite in Nick Fuentes. Representative Fine from Florida said that Tucker Carlson was the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. So they are really going over the top, and they're freaking out, trying to destroy Tucker Carlson. But what I want to talk about in this video is why Tucker Carlson has such a big audience and why there are so many young people who are listening to Nick Fuentes, because that's ultimately what they're really worried about. The younger crowd, and all the polling shows this, is not supporting Israel. And if that trend continues over time, support for Israel will collapse in the United States, which will be a massive blow to Zionists and a massive blow to Israel. So, why is this all happening? Why do they have this support? First, I'll point out that this current generation is just different. If you were born after 2000, Fuentes is 26, so he's right around there. But if you were born after 2000, you're in your 20s, you weren't raised in the atmosphere that people who were older were raised in, which was right after World War II, when that was fresh in people's memories, the Holocaust, the Nazis. So people who were born in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s even, you were taught from a very young age to not be critical of Israel, not be critical of Jews generally. And if somebody said the word or the phrase, the Jews, your instinct was to respond like Pavlov's dog, like, no, don't say that. How dare you? You can't go there. So the older generations were very, very careful and very reticent to say anything negative about Israel, largely, and Jews, especially people on the right. Now, this younger generation doesn't have that. World War II for them is way, way in the past, and they don't have that same response when people ask questions that are verboten, that are taboo. When people question our relationship with Israel, they don't have that same reflex. And that's why there are so many people, young people, listening to people like Nick Fuentes. So that's the young people. But for the rest of us who are a little older, who were born, again, before 2000, I was born in the early 80s. For the rest of us, it's something else. And that is so many blatant hypocrisies that we see, that if we're honest with ourselves, if we have any self-respect and pride, we are, bothered by. There are so many hypocrisies that just can't be ignored. And for me personally, it drives me absolutely bonkers to see these hypocrisies. So that's what I really want to get into and go through. So what are these things that annoy me so much? Well, the question about who is America first. I think I'm America first because I put, as it says, America first. However, people like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro would claim that I'm not America first and I'm anti-American because I question the state of Israel. And that is really, really annoying to me. So here is our friend Mark Levin screaming about what is America first.
You don't get to claim you're MAGA and America first when you're lining up with the Marxists and the Islamists and Hamas and the terrorists. That's not America first. That's sick.
So He is defining what America first is, and if you're aligning with these enemies of his, you're not America first. And again, the irony is that 2016, he was not on board with MAGA. He came later. And now he's trying to define the movement. So what really drives me crazy about that? America first and his position. Well, we have to talk about Miriam Adelson. Since 2016, Miriam Adelson and her husband, Sheldon, he's recently passed away, but they have given hundreds of millions of dollars to Donald Trump for his campaigns, and they are huge supporters of Israel. In fact, they're so big supporters of Israel that Trump himself, the president, so this is not coming from me, he said that he asked Miriam Adelson who she loved more, and she wouldn't answer the question. So here's what Donald Trump himself said in Israel.
Miriam and Sheldon would come into the office. They'd call me. He'd call me. I think they had more trips to the White House than anybody else I can think of. Look at her sitting there so innocently. She's got $60 billion in the bank. $60 billion, and I think she's saying no more. And she loves Israel, but she loves it. And they would come in, and her husband was a very aggressive man, but I loved him. He was a very aggressive, very supportive of me. And he'd call up, can I come over and see you? I say, Sheldon, I'm the president of the United States. It doesn't work that way. He'd come in and we would do. Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country.
She does. Not America.
She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say.
And that is exactly what it means. The biggest individual donor to President Trump is somebody who lives in a foreign country who would not answer whether or not she loved America or the other country more. She wouldn't answer that question. And as President Trump said, he thinks it's because the answer is Israel. So I'm being lectured by people about what is America first when this is going on. Have you heard Mark Levin or Ben Shapiro talk about Miriam Adelson not being America first and being Israel first, being the largest individual donor to Donald Trump since 2016? Have you heard a peep? Nope. And it gets actually much, much worse. Why is that? Well, Jonathan Pollard, he worked for the Navy, and he was a spy. He got caught. He got thrown in jail for a very long time, but eventually he got released. And this is what happened when he got released. He went back to Israel. Jonathan Pollard, spy for Israel, gets hero's welcome from who? Netanyahu. Your home. Our greatest ally, our biggest supporter, Israel, and their great prime minister, Netanyahu, is giving a hero's welcome for a spy that damaged national security because he took those secrets, gave them to Israel, and Israel gave them to who? Russia. Gave them to Russia. So we're being lectured that we need to support Israel because that's America first, when this person, this spy, is given a hero's welcome in Israel for spying on the United States. But it gets even worse. The Pollards, Jonathan Pollard and his family, flew to Israel from the U.S. state of New Jersey on board a private jet owned by U.S. billionaire Sheldon Adelson and his wife, Miriam. So, the largest donor to Donald Trump wouldn't say that she supports America first, and she flew home a traitor to Israel on her private plane. Oh, and here she is, Miriam Adelson, getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But they're going to lecture us about who is America first. Does that not seem completely ridiculous? Have you heard Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin ever say a peep about Miriam Adelson and her allegiances and the fact that a U.S. spy who severely damaged national security was given a hero's welcome by Netanyahu and flown to Israel on a plane owned by the Adelsons? Have you heard a peep from them? Nope, and you never will, but they will lecture you about what is America first. And that is so ridiculous that any person who's not biased, who's a free thinker, will go, what the F? That's insanity. But that's exactly what has happened. So what is another thing? That's the America First thing. What is another thing that drives people who are rational crazy? And for me, it is the accusations of anti-Semitism and claiming that we, people who criticize Israel, that we're bigots. And why does that annoy me? Because actually, there's some things we can look at that might show it to be the other way around. So first, let me play a clip from Tucker Carlson where he's talking about his view on groups and individuals and what he thinks about that.
I also think there's like a true, not just principle, but like spiritual reality that we have to defend, which is God created every person as an individual, not as a group. No woman gave birth to a community. Like, we hate that kind of thinking, right? Collectivist thinking like that. But because just that principle that we're all judged as individuals by what we do, that our faith, the decisions that we make, the way we live our lives, and God will judge every one of us in that way. And that's how we're supposed to judge.
So that seems pretty reasonable. We're all individuals who stand before God to be judged alone. We shouldn't be identified with our group. That's all reasonable. And he points to our Christian values as that of thinking that way. So is there anything bigoted about that? I wouldn't say so. However, we have a Pastor Hagee, I've talked about him before, who was brought to Israel to speak in front of Israeli politicians, and people like Mark Levin were in the crowd. And here's what Pastor Hagee said about another group of people.
Deuteronomy 7:6, for you, Israel, are a chosen people, a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself. Listen to this next sentence. A special treasure above all the people on the face of the earth. That includes the United States of America.
So my question, and again, you're not allowed to ask questions, but I will. Is that not the definition of bigotry when you say a certain group stands above other people? They're special. And this is conferred through their bloodlines, because we know that many people who are Jewish identify as atheists, but they're Jewish through their bloodlines. So we have an American pastor going to Israel and telling a group of Israelis and Jews, obviously they're one and the same usually, except for, there's other groups there as well, but primarily Jews. And he's telling them that they're special. They're above other people. That they're above the United States. Now, Were there any Israelis in the crowd that said, you know what, Pastor Hagee, that's very kind to you, but I don't condone that. I don't think you should say that any one group of people is better than any other group of people and that we're all equal in God's eyes. Did anyone say that? I didn't hear it. So when I listen to a Hagee say that, and then the people who support Hagee, like Mark Levin, turn around and call someone like Tucker Carlson a bigot, and as Randy Fine said, the most dangerous anti-Semite in America, I'm going, give me one thing he said that's bigoted, that's supremacist. He hasn't. But I can show you a clip of somebody saying something that, in my opinion, is very supremacist. So that hypocrisy there is really annoying. And people see that, and it's very frustrating. And that's why Tucker Carlson lashed out at the Christian Zionists. People like Hagee who say this kind of thing. And he's going, what are you talking about? How are you elevating another people in another country above your own? And you have Ted Cruz. When I go to the Senate, my goal is to be the best servant of Israel, or supporter of Israel. Same difference. And Tucker's going, why? And Cruz goes, because the Bible commands me. And he's like, really? You Christian Zionist? And of course, Tucker, in his interview with Dave Smith that was last night, apologized, saying, hey, you know what? I do know some Christian Zionists who are good people. And that's a fair thing to say. I know Christian Zionists who are very sweet people. But I think they are dead wrong. And when some of them get into power, like a John Bolton and a Ted Cruz, it's very destructive for the country. And they've enacted a foreign policy, these Christian Zionists, along with Jewish Zionists, that has been very detrimental to the entire world. So we talk about bigotry, anti-Semitism, but I call out people like Hagee, who I think are saying bigoted things when they elevate one group above another based off of in my opinion, a bad translation of what the Bible is actually saying. And of course, any text from any holy book, whether it's the Quran or the Bible, people have their interpretations, and everybody has their own claim, and they'll pick something that fits their worldview. And in the case of Hagee, he's obviously a huge Zionist, so his interpretation is that the Jewish people are, the apple of God's eye, and that they're above all of us, even here in the United States. But I reject that completely. And the last one I want to point out, the last thing that drives normal people crazy, if they have a conscience, is this idea that killing civilians, is good sometimes, but not at other times. And one in particular, one thing that the neocons defend is the bombing of Japan, the dropping of nuclear weapons. And Tucker Carlson said on Joe Rogan that he thought doing that was evil. And when he said that, he was attacked by the usual suspects. One person in particular, Ben Shapiro, shocker, he says here, no, America was not evil for dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And no, just asking questions doesn't make you a critical thinker. Evaluating evidence, claims, and counterclaims does. So here's what Ben Shapiro said at the time.
Wilson was on Joe Rogan's show. Obviously, I'm very friendly with Joe. I think Joe does a great job during his interviews. And there was a clip from this interview that went particularly viral. This is a clip in which Tucker Carlson calls the United States evil for having dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, ending World War II, and then suggests that anyone who would justify that is also evil, which is a very traditionally left-wing perspective.
Okay,
it's not traditionally a particularly right-wing perspective, because most people on the conservative side of the aisle tend to believe that America is a force for good in the world. And as we'll discuss, it turns out that dropping the atomic bomb on Japan was necessary for ending World War II and likely saved millions of lives, both American and Japanese.
So that's the narrative, that it was necessary to stop World War II. And of course, the victors, they're the ones that write history. So of course, after World War II, if you've incinerated a few 100,000 civilians, well, you do have a motivation to try to write history in a way that makes you look good and not evil, as Tucker Carlson suggests. Here's the problem, though. You know who else who said that it was unnecessary to drop the atomic bomb? Oh, President Eisenhower. And he said this, and this is from the New York Times, quoting Eisenhower from his memoirs. Former President Dwight D. Eisenhower has disclosed that in 1945, he believed dropping an atomic bomb on Japan was completely unnecessary. The former Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe recalled in his memoirs of his White House years that he had grave misgivings when he was told of plans to use the new weapon. He said that he believed Japan was already defeated and thought the United States should avoid shocking world opinion. So I guess Dwight Eisenhower is a leftist who blames America for everything, according to Ben Shapiro. And the reason it's annoying when people defend vaporizing 100,000 civilians like that, women, children, elderly, because most of them were gone fighting, is because when it comes to Russia or Israel, when a Ukrainian gets killed by a Russian strike, or a missile goes into Israel and civilians get killed, what's our response to that? Well, our response is we call it a war crime. And we see this in the New York Times, another article from the New York Times, describing Russian drone attacks as being a war crime. And so when it's convenient for us, we will point to Putin or Xi or anybody else in a war as being war criminals if a civilian gets killed. But at the same time, we will defend dropping an atomic weapon on a civilian population and incinerating, instantly 100,000 men, women, and children. So if you are a reasonable person, you're not a psycho, you might, in hindsight, go, you know what? That was pretty messed up. Maybe we shouldn't target civilian populations. And apparently that's controversial to people like Ben Shapiro. And why is Ben Shapiro defending that so hard? Well, in my opinion, it's because he's watching Israel drop bombs on Gaza, where the vast majority of the people that they're killing are civilians, women, and children. So if he were to open the door to condemning the attack on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, then he would open the door for criticisms of the IDF and how they were prosecuting and are still prosecuting the war in Gaza. So ultimately, he wasn't defending America, in my opinion. He was defending his favorite country, not America, Israel. And that's why he did it. So for us normal people, we see these hypocrisies. We see these people lecture us on America first, what it is to be MAGA. Meanwhile, at the same time, they ignore all these other things that us regular people look at and go, what the heck is going on here? Why is the president in a foreign country saying that his biggest donor loves Israel more? And why is she flying spies back to Israel? A spy that gave them secrets to turn over to the Russians. And they're going to lecture us on who's America first. It's insulting. If you have any pride, as an American or as a rational human being, you should be like, get the hell out of here. And that's what I say, and that's what people like Tucker Carlson say, and people like Shapiro, Levin, Fine, Lindsey Graham. It's not just Jewish Zionists. There's also other Zionists as well, Christian Zionists, who attack you for being a reasonable and rational person, and they call you a leftist, a Marxist, a sympathizer, whatever they want to throw at you. They denigrate you just for being a rational human being. And the problem is, as time goes on, more and more people aren't being fooled by it and going, you know what? I will ask some questions. Killing civilians, I do have a problem with that. Rubbing shoulders with traitors, that's not good. Saying that this country's our best friend when they're stabbing us in the back, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to support that. More and more people are saying that, and that's why they are coming so hard at Tucker Carlson, because if his power and reach keeps growing, it doesn't threaten the Republican Party. It threatens the neoconservatives, and it threatens the pro-Zionist wing of the Republican Party. And that's what it's all about. Well, that is it for now. If you are new to my channel, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.